Chapter 1 Part 1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Emirates Flight 5204 just landed at the Garan Airport. The last to get off the plane is a young man dressed in all white. A white jean ripped at the knees, white heels and a white tank top with a white pullover his shoulders. Sighing, he picks up the car seat next to him and grabs two sets of bags, one his and the other a light blue baby bag with brown teddy bears on it. The young man greets the air hostess as he exits the plane and pulls out his mobile dialing for an Uber to pick them up. After walking through the airport he finds a place for himself to sit down and puts the car seat in front by his feet and rubs his face due to being so tired. The little baby in the car seat whimpers, gaining the young man's attention that he looks up from his hands at the baby and looks around in the airport. It's busy and noisy, so it's no wonder that the little wolf in the car seat woke up. A wolf's enhanced hearing has its pros and cons. Just as he is about to pick up the baby, his phone rings and it's a notification from the Uber. Sighing, he picks up the bags and the car seat and walks out to the pickup area. He quickly found the Uber and put his bags in the car and sat in the back with the baby. The driver drives off and asks, "Where to, Mississippi?" The young man looks into the rearview mirror and smiles slightly. "Please take me to the Solver Riviera," he says, and the driver nods. He is offered water and sweet things to snack on, which he just puts everything in his bag. He picks the baby up, who is glaring at him, and pulls out his left breast, rubbing his nipple against the baby's lips, who opens up and starts suckling. A smile tugs at the little big baby's lips as he sucks and his eyes soon close. The driver informs him that the ride is about an hour long and that the fee will be almost $100. The young man just nods his head and closes his eyes but warns, "My son's father knows we are on our way, so no funny business, you hear me?" The driver looked into the mirror at the young man who was breastfeeding his baby but doesn't comment. It wasn't the first time he heard this threat and it won't be the last, but he did take note of the slight deepness in his tone and Russian accent. The driver stopped at a huge mansion outside the gates in the forest and gawked at the way it looked. He didn't know that something this big existed. He turned in his seat to look at the young man and didn't want to wake him up, but still did. Clearing his throat he said, "Excuse me, we're here." Because of his enhanced hearing, he opened his eyes and looked outside the window. He saw the warrior wolves in human form standing outside looking at them. Picking up his baby, he told the Uber driver to wait here and got out. He walked to the gate and looked at the warrior, who was looking at him oddly. "Can I help you?" he asked, and the young man looked at him. The baby in his arms glared at the warrior wolf, who surprisingly and instantly recognized the birthmark his alpha had under his left eye, which the baby had too. He looked at the young woman in front of him who had yet to answer him and frowned. "This is where Alpha Cedric Dimitri lives, right?" he says, and the warrior nods his head. "Yes, but our alpha isn't in," he answered, and the young lady nods her head. "I don't care if he is here or not, just as long as he lives here. Open the gate and get my bags out of the car, and don't forget to pay the driver," he orders, and the warrior looks at him as if he is a madman. He wasn't sure, because the young lady and her baby had the alpha's scent on them. Although it was faint, it was still there. He looked at her neck and saw the markings on her neck, but still wasn't sure. He wasn't sure because their Luna was already named, and in the packhouse at this very moment the baby in his arms became cranky and started sniffling. The young man's head snapped to the baby in his arms and said, "Regal, you better not start." The warrior blocked his ears while a few other warriors came running over to see what made the sound. They were shocked to see who it was, and the baby in the young man's arms looked exactly like the picture up in the gathering hall, but that picture was of their alpha, so how could their alpha be here in another woman's arms when he was already grown and almost 20.6 years old? The Gamma of the pack came out to investigate, since both the alpha and the beta weren't around and he was left in charge. The minute he stepped out of the packhouse he could smell a familiar scent in the air. His eyes immediately widened in surprise. He quickly rushed off and ordered the pack warriors to gather at the gates. When he arrived there he couldn't believe it. Last year, after they visited the Russian council, their alpha disappeared for 3 days, then returned with an odd smell on him and was furious but wouldn't tell them why, and now, here, in front of him, that same smell was on the young woman who stood opposite them. He looked at her from top to bottom and couldn't believe it. The closer he got to her, the scent of his alpha grew. His eyes trailed over the markings on the left side of her neck and it clicked. Looking down at the baby in her arms made all the questions in his mind come up with an answer. He looked into the young man's eyes and said, "I'm the Gamma of the Solver Pack, Kenneth Wedra. Our Alpha isn't here, may I know your name?" Regal immediately stopped crying and looked at the Gamma who was speaking. The young man said, "Well, it's nice to meet you, Kenneth Wedra. I'm Wolfram Melklovavich from the Siberian Wolf Pack in Russia, and this young man in my arms is Regal Dakarov Melklovavich. I do not care that your Alpha is not here. Open the gates so Regal and I can enter, the bags are in the car and the driver needs to be paid." Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.